नहीं बैठणगे आके सब लोकी फिर भाईचारे नाल वोटां पाउणगे आके देश मेरे दा सारा सिस्टम देश मेरे दा सारा सिस्टम सब थाई एक सार होवे 5 सालां लई बण के ते फिर कम्मां ते सरकार होवे 5 सालां लई बण के ते फिर कम्मां ते सरकार होवे एक देश ते इको इलेक्शन हो होके वादे घट होवणगे दल बदली घट जाऊ अपना अपना वाजा लीडर फेर न कोई बजाऊ होके वादे घट होवणगे दल बदली घट जाऊ अपना अपना वाजा ना कोई लीडर फेर बजाऊ विकसित देश दा सुपना साडा विकसित देश दा सुपना साडा दुनिया विच साकार होवे 5 सालां लई बण के ते फिर कम्मां ते सरकार होवे 5 सालां लई बण के ते फिर कम्मां ते सरकार होवे एक देश ते इको इलेक्शन हो एक देश ते इको इलेक्शन क्यों झंझट वारो वार होवे 5 सालां लई बण के ते फिर कम्मां ते सरकार होवे 5 सालां लई बण के ते फिर कम्मां ते सरकार होवे एक देश ते इको इलेक्शन हो
Thank you, IDT. The most important aspect of every educational institution is students. We have some of our critical thinkers who will be presenting their insights on One Nation, One Election, Reshaping India's Electoral Landscape with us. To start with, I invite Ms. Vanchika on the stage, please.
Good evening to the respected dignitaries, esteemed guests, and the bright young minds gathered here today. It's an honor to speak on a topic that shaped the future of the nation. One nation, one election. Let me begin with a simple image. Imagine there is a school which held exams every month. For some in January, for others in March, and for few in May. Teachers are always invigilating, never teaching. Students are always preparing, never learning. And school always in election mode and never in a progress mode. And replace the school with our nation and you will get an idea that what one nation, one election seeks to solve. This, ladies and gentlemen, is not a crisis of democracy but of its delivery. India, the world's largest democracy, a title we carry with immense pride, but today I risk to ask a difficult and yet a necessary question. Are we voting too often to govern too little? We are not conducting elections. We are living inside a continuous program of campaigns, promises, and a political churn. And what this cost? This cost far more than financial, the societal, emotional, and administrative thing. That is why the idea of one nation, one election is not just a logistical reform, but it's a visionary creation. One that this democracy urgently needs. The proposal is simple: to hold Lok Sabha and state assembly elections together every 5 years. And instead of conducting elections separately across different states and districts at different times. If we look at current election system of India, we see that elections are happening every single year. For example, in 2024, we first had Lok Sabha elections, and after that we see elections happening in the state of Haryana, Jharkhand, Kashmir. And these elections are happening in different months in a year. Apart from them, the local bodies, elections from multiple municipalities and panchayat keep happening somewhere in the country. So in India, there's always election happening somewhere or another. Now this begs the question, what exactly is the problem with election happening every few months? This constant electoral cycle brings three major problems. First, it caused disruption in governance. As every time election is announced, the model code of conduct comes into effect. It holds policy making and stops the government to launch any kind of new development or new projects, which puts the government in a waiting mode. This pause does not last for a few days, but it stretches for a few months. And for the country like India, where development is a race against time, delayed project means lost opportunities for the progress. And the second, it leads to administrative strain. If the government officers, doctors, teachers, and security personnel are pulled away every single time to manage elections, then the societal cost becomes too heavy to ignore. Third, and perhaps the most important, it causes societal and voter fatigue. Citizens are called to vote again and again. The excitement of elections slowly fades into frustration and voter fatigue arises. Trust in democratic process weakens. Democracy is not just about voting, but it's about believing that your vote matters. When elections are held frequently, the magic of democracy rises and turns into a mere formality. One nation, one election can change this. It is not just desirable, but it is necessary. Let us not look at this idea through the lens of difficulty, but rather through a lens of possibility. Let us dream of a nation that is more efficient, more responsive, and more citizen-centric. One nation, one election is a step toward that future. A step towards a stronger, united, and more vibrant India. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanshika. Next up is Mantej. Please come on the stage.
Great nations are not built on convenience. They are built on conviction, clarity, and the courage to reform. A very good afternoon to distinguished guests, faculty members, and the audience. Today, it's an honor to share my perspective on a subject that sits at the very intersection of democratic efficiency, physical prudence, and institutional reforms. That is, one nation, one election. From the very nomenclature, that is, one nation, one election, it is clear that the core idea behind this vision is to hold simultaneous elections of Lok Sabha and state assemblies along with the local bodies. And as rightly mentioned by our chief guest, that this is not a new concept for our nation. If we look at our nation's history, the first election that was held in independent India in 1951, from 1951 to 1967, India was following the system of simultaneous elections. But it was actually in 1968 and 1969 in which, due to some premature dissolution of few state assemblies and subsequently 1970, the premature dissolution of the 4th Lok Sabha, that this synchronization was disrupted. So the question before us today is not whether simultaneous elections are possible or not. They are very much possible. The question is whether they are desirable and sustainable in our current legal and administrative landscape. Believing that the answer is a resounding yes, provided that we pursue it with political will, legal clarity, and administrative readiness. To understand one nation, one election, we must first look at the governance perspective. We are holding multiple elections, and as already quoted by my friend, that with multiple elections you will have model code of conduct, which is going to freeze the decision making. But not only model code of conduct, also whenever you have an election in a state or the central election, the focus of the government shifts from governance to campaigning. So this focus, this shift of government from governance to campaigning, this affects developmental project.
especially at the grassroots level. If we are able to have a synchronized electoral calendar, which is being proposed in One Nation, One Election, we can minimize these disruptions, allowing governments to focus more on governance rather than campaigning. Secondly, the economic argument is very compelling, which was mentioned by our honorable guest. India spends thousands of crores on election. According to a parliamentary panel, the Election Commission of India spends more than rupees 4,500 crores to conduct elections of Lok Sabha and state assemblies. This 4,500 is excluding the expenditure incurred by political parties and candidates. So if we are able to save this much money, if we are able to consolidate all this process into one election, we are not only saving cost here, we are also lowering the burden on administration and on security forces, which has to be called up, which has to be reutilized every time a new election is called. More than this, in a high-level committee, which was headed and led by our former president, Mr. Ram Nath Kovind, the report had submitted that India's national real GDP growth with simultaneous elections would be 1.5 percent points higher in the immediate next year compared to the previous year. To put this into perspective, 1.5% of GDP is equivalent to 4.5 lakh crore according to financial year 2024. This is almost half of the public spending on healthcare and 1/3 on education. So with One Nation, One Election, we are not only saving money that the government can invest in other critical sectors of economy that like healthcare and education. This is also stimulating economic growth, creating a stable business environment. You can imagine relentless political rhetoric, repeated mobilization of public resources, and a constant administrative alertness creates an environment of instability and unrest. With one elections, we can lead a more peaceful and a constructive political discourse. More than this, people can be given an opportunity to interact with the government outside this din of elections. People in India interact with the government more in the election and less on the governance. If the government is given an opportunity and more time to focus on governance, people can articulate their expression and their right to vote in a better manner, because now they are dealing with the governments more on governance and less on the election day. To conclude, I would say that One Nation, One Election is not merely a procedural reform. It is a profound constitutional reimagination. Yes, it calls for bold steps. Yes, it calls for deep deliberation and bipartisan majority. Because if this is done right, this has the potential to redefine governance in India, making it more focused, stable, and people-centric. So let us not ask whether it is convenient. Let us ask whether it strengthens our democracy. And if you ask me, I believe that yes, it strengthens our democracy. So let us come together and begin the political and institutional consensus required to make this into a reality and make our nation great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pantej, for such an insightful opinion. Now, can we please have Mr. Arvind on the stage? Mr. Arvind.
Best of evenings to one and all present here, to the dignitaries on and off the dais. As my learned friends have already taken you through the theoretical aspect of it, I will be focusing on actuating the one. I would simply allude to a case of Ireland, Ryan's judgment, 1935 case, which indicates at how powerful is the constituent power of a parliament. Parliament in India functions under a dual capacity, not merely legislative capacity, but most essentially in the capacity of a constituent assembly. And whensoever an amendment is made by virtue of exercise of that constituent power, then it has the power to do it. Ryan's judgment, what had happened, the Irish forefathers framed the Constitution of Ireland, and for the first 8 years, it left it upon the parliament, elected parliament, to do whatsoever amendment they wanted. Now, interestingly, what this Irish parliament does is, it amends that very article which gave them that first 8 years power and increases it to 16 years. Again, a tenurial extension. Now, whether such an amendment could be done or not, this was the challenge before the Irish Supreme Court. The Irish Supreme Court says that, look, it is not the parliament that is amending. It is the parliament acting in the capacity of a constituent assembly amending. So as such, it is beyond judicial review. This is one such matter, which is a policy matter, which is beyond judicial review, first off. On that note, let me now quickly cluster these amendment articles. Now, the first amendment, 129 Constitutional Amendment Bill, it has 5 sections, majorly proposing to amend 4 articles. First being the insertion of a new article, namely Article 82, capital A. This, if I have to cluster these articles, in 2 manners I will cluster it. Bringing about the initial simultaneity, and then furthering that established simultaneity. Now, Article 82A establishes that initial simultaneity when it proposes and states, as rightly quoted by the Chief Guest himself, that it introduces a date to be appointed or notified by the President of India, in which after that appointed date, whichsoever elected legislative assembly or Vidhan Sabhas, then their tenure will automatically be simultaneous to the expiry of the Lok Sabha. This is bringing about the initial simultaneity. Now, is it constitutional or not? I support it using 2 judgments, because this is a one-time measure. And the Supreme Court, in 2 cases, namely R.S. Garg versus State of UP 2006, and also in State of Jammu and Kashmir versus District Bar Association Bindapur 2016 judgment, said that an one-time measure is constitutional. In these 2 cases, what had happened is, irregularly appointed servants were regularized as a one-time measure. So we have something called one-time measure in India. So this initial simultaneity bringing about this is a one-time measure, and it would pass the test of constitutionality by virtue of these 2 cases and the principle laid down by the Supreme Court. Now, furthering or continuing this simultaneity, this is done by virtue of amendments to 83, Article 83 and 172. Now, under Article 83, 4 clauses have been added. 83 clause 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Now, very briefly, 2 articles are very important. This is similar to 172 as well, because 172 deals with duration of Vidhan Sabhas and 183 deals with duration of Lok Sabha. Now, 83 clause 4 states that the moment the parliament is earlier dissolved, then the immediately elected parliament will not serve a new term of 5 years, but will only be serving the remainder or unexpired term as employed in the Act. Now, is it again constitutional or not? They are testing it under Article 14. Now, 14 in the Constitution's preamble clearly implies the term equality of opportunity. Now, in this case, I prefer to call this a negative opportunity. And this is a negative opportunity created not by any conscious effort, but by the circumstances. A dissolution is a circumstance, nobody has anything to do with it. It is not consciously created. So this negative opportunity, are we shutting off to one particular party? Today I am unfortunate. I have a misfortune. Any other party. So there is equality. And there is no arbitrariness as such. Because the lens to which you test Article 14 is the lens of arbitrariness and manifest arbitrariness. Is it manifest arbitrary? Is somebody exercising their discretion there? It is something which is occurring by the mere factor or circumstance. So as such, this challenge will also be not maintainable. Now the last article, whether the parliament can actually make laws determining how the state will regulate its election, obviously one explicit article gives this power, which has been mentioned in the bill itself, Article 327, which clearly states that power of the parliament to make provisions with respect to elections of the state legislative assemblies. Now this one other word has been added by virtue of this amendment, preparation of electoral rolls and also delimitation of constituency. This amendment adds just one other word, which is conduct of simultaneous elections. Yes, the parliament has power to do it and regulate the state legislative assembly elections as well. In the end, let me also quote a judgment which will make it very clear of what this one nation, one election is. This judgment gave what we know as right to vote. PUCL, People's Union of Civil Liberties versus Union of India, 2024 judgment. in which the right to information of citizens about candidates contesting the election was upheld. Now, Justice Venkatarama Reddy, he says right to vote has two constituents to it. One is formulation of opinion, the other is expression of that formulated opinion. Now, formulation of opinion, ample time is given to every citizen of 5 years or so to formulate their opinions. Merely, we are giving a specific time frame. One nation, one election doesn't mean one day, one election. We are giving a specific time frame for you to express the opinion which you have formulated in 5 years. Now, that time frame, I believe, it is only rational to draw a corollary to which every student can relate. Let us assume there are two teachers, one of history subject, the other be of science subject. They give you an assignment on 1st of May and they give you a submission deadline on 20th of May. You have a period of 20 days to formulate and prepare the assignment. All you have to do is submit it or express this assignment on that one particular date of May 20. So this is what one nation, one election is. Much obliged. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arvind. Last but not least, we have Mr. Atharv. Can we please have you on the stage?
दुनिया का इतिहास पूछता रोम कहाँ, यूनान कहाँ है। घर घर में शुभ अग्नि जलाता वो उन्नत ईरान कहाँ है। दीप बुझे जब पश्चिमी जगत के दियारा, किंतु चीर कर तम की छाती चमका हिंदू। नमस्कार, मैं हरदीप सिंह और आज हम जिस विषय पर चर्चा कर रहे हैं उस विषय का लेना देना इस देश की एकता, अखंडता और मेरी भारत माता के सिर के ताज यानी लोकतंत्र से है। जी हाँ, मैं बात करने वाला हूं भारत और एक राष्ट्र एक चुनाव की। आदरणीय, इस विषय पर कोई भी वाद विवाद हो, इसके पहले हमें यह समझना आवश्यक है कि भारत एक देश है, सिर्फ एक देश नहीं। जब 28 राज्य, 8 केंद्रीय शासित प्रदेश, 3000 जातियां, 25,000 उपजातियां और 650 कबीले के लोग एक छत के नीचे बैठकर राष्ट्र हित में फैसला लेते हैं, तब निर्माण होता है भारतीयता का। और एक राष्ट्र एक चुनाव भारतीयता के लिए आवश्यक है, क्योंकि मान्यवर, हम जिस देश में रहते हैं उस देश में आपके मत की कीमत भी उतनी ही है जितनी एक दिहाड़ी पर कार्यरत मजदूर के मत की कीमत है। अंतर बस इतना है कि आपको आपके मत का महत्व पता है, उस इंसान को शायद उसके मत का महत्व नहीं पता। और ऐसे में जब उस इंसान से 5 साल में 4 बार मतदान करवाया जाएगा तो कल्पना कीजिए मतदान की व्यापकता की, कल्पना कीजिए मतदान के स्तर की और कल्पना कीजिए ऐसे लोकतंत्र की। अल्लामा इकबाल ने लिखा कि जमहूरियत वो तर्ज हुकूमत है जहां एक मतदान को गिना जाता है, तोला नहीं जाता। और ऐसे में जब एक राष्ट्र एक चुनाव अंतिम कतार में खड़े अंतिम व्यक्ति को यह अधिकार देता है कि वो अपने गांव के प्रधान से लेकर देश के प्रधानमंत्री तक का चुनाव एक दिन में कर दे, तब मैं कहता हूं कि एक राष्ट्र एक चुनाव उस मनुष्य को उसके देश के प्रति उसकी जानकारी बताने के लिए अत्यंत आवश्यक है। क्योंकि राजतंत्र, वामपंथ और तानाशाही एक विचारधारा पर चलते हैं, लोकतंत्र हर एक विचारधारा का समर्थन करता है। और ऐसे में जब एक राष्ट्र एक चुनाव झारखंड में बैठे किसी गांव के व्यक्ति को उसके देश के प्रधानमंत्री का चुनाव भी उसी जागरूकता के साथ करवाता है जिस जागरूकता के साथ वो अपने गांव के प्रधान का चुनाव करता है, तब मुझे लगता है कि यह सोच का फैलाव हमारे देश के लिए अत्यंत आवश्यक है। ये सोच का फैलाव हमारे लोकतंत्र के लिए अत्यंत आवश्यक है, क्योंकि दशरथ नंदन श्री राम जब तक अयोध्या में रहे, अपने कबीलावाद में रहे, वो दशरथ नंदन राम कहलाए। लेकिन जब 14 बरस जंगल जंगल घूम कर लौटे तो मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम भगवान राम कहलाए। ये मैं कहना चाहता हूं, और यही वो फैलाव है जो आज हमारे लोकतांत्रिक मानसिकता के लिए अत्यंत आवश्यक है। आदरणीय, इस विषय का संवैधानिक पक्ष और कानूनी पक्ष मेरे साथी वक्ता आपके समक्ष रख के गए हैं और इस बात का पूर्णतः समर्थन करता हूं। परंतु आज मेरा दायित्व है कि इस विषय का मानवीय परिप्रेक्ष्य आपके सामने रखूं। 2 व्यक्ति 40 बरस की उम्र अकस्मात मृत्यु को प्राप्त हुए। एक व्यक्ति ने मरते मरते मुंह से बोला राम, तो दूसरे व्यक्ति के मुंह से निकला रोटी। जब पोस्टमार्टम किया गया तो पता चला कि जिसके मुंह से राम निकला उसका पेट भरा हुआ था और जिसके मुख से रोटी निकली उसका पेट खाली था। अर्थात अगर मुख से राम निकलना है तो पेट में रोटी होना आवश्यक है। और जब एक राष्ट्र एक चुनाव प्रतिवर्ष 4.5 लाख करोड़ का सकल घरेलू उत्पाद बनाता है, तो कल्पना कीजिए कितने लोगों के पेट में रोटी जाएगी, कितने लोगों के मुंह से राम निकलेगा, देश का कितना विकास होगा। फैसला आपके हाथ में छोड़ता हूं। जब हम सबसे कम लागत में चांद पर जाने का माथा रख सकते हैं, सबसे कम लागत में मतदान क्यों नहीं करवा सकते? जब हम कम अंतराल में रुकने वाली लोकल ट्रेन को छोड़कर लंबे अंतराल पर रुकने वाली वंदे भारत ट्रेन पकड़ना पसंद करते हैं, तो एक निश्चित अंतराल के बाद होने वाले मतदान क्यों पसंद नहीं कर सकते? और जिस देश में दिवाली एक निश्चित दिन मनाई जाती है, होली एक निश्चित दिन मनाई जाती है, तो दुनिया के सबसे बड़े लोकतंत्र में लोकतंत्र का सबसे बड़ा त्योहार एक निश्चित दिन क्यों नहीं मनाया जा सकता? फैसला आपके हाथ में है। हम चाहें तो कतरा कतरा रत्नाकर हो सकता है, हम चाहें तो कंकड़ कंकड़ शिव शंकर हो सकता है, हम चाहें तो लोकतंत्र स्वराज शुरू हो सकता है, हम चाहें तो भारत फिर से विश्व गुरु हो सकता है। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
Thank you so much, Athar, for such a wonderful talk. It is my proud privilege to invite a dynamic leader and a visionary educationist, Sardar Satnam Singh Sandhuji, Member of Parliament and Honorable Chancellor, Chandigarh University, to deliver this gathering.
Chief guest of the day, Union Minister Sri Hardeep Singh Puri ji. Special guest of the day, Chani ji, my colleague, Professor Manisuti, Sadipa and Parampal ji, distinguished professors, teachers, and dear students. हमारा देश भारत पिछले कुछ दिनों से एक पेन से गुजर रहा है। पहलगाम के इंसिडेंट ने पूरे देश को एक दर्द दिया है। और इससे पहले कि मैं अपनी बात रखूं, मैं चंडीगढ़ यूनिवर्सिटी फैमिली की ओर से अपने उन परिवारों के साथ जिनके मेंबर्स अपनी जान खो चुके हैं, उनके प्रति स्नेह का प्रगटावा करता हूं, और जिनकी जानें गई हैं उनको आप सभी की ओर से ट्रिब्यूट पेश करता हूं। प्यारे दोस्तों, आज एक विषय, एक टॉपिक, वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन, जिस पे चर्चा हो रही है, ये एक मुद्दा है, एक टॉपिक है, लेकिन सबसे बड़ा मुद्दा आज जो मुझे दिख रहा है, मुझे समझ आ रहा है, वो है भारत को एक मजबूत राष्ट्र बना के दुनिया के सामने पेश करना। मैं आज के इस कार्यक्रम में पहुंचे चीफ गेस्ट ऑफ द डे श्री हरदीप सिंह पुरी जी को पंजाब की धरती पे आए हैं, जी आए कहता हूँ, हार्दिक अभिनंदन करता हूँ। और मैं थैंक्स करना चाहूँगा चन्नी जी, आपका, आपकी पूरी टीम का, कि आपने चंडीगढ़ यूनिवर्सिटी में ये इवेंट होस्ट करने का हमें अवसर दिया। हम समझते हैं कि स्टूडेंट्स का सोशली सेंसिटिव होना और पॉलिटिकल अवेयर होना बहुत ज़रूरी है। और मैंने जैसे अभी आपकी स्पीचेस सुनी, आपके लॉजिक सुने, तो मुझे लगा कि चंडीगढ़ यूनिवर्सिटी अपने इस काम में बाखूबी कामयाब हो रही है। हमारे स्टूडेंट्स सोशली सेंसिटिव भी हैं और पॉलिटिकल अवेयर भी हैं। अच्छी बात है कि पुरी साहब हमारे कैंपस में आए हैं, लेकिन मैं दावे से कह सकता हूं चन्नी जी कि हमारे कैंपस से चाहे आप ब्रांड एम्बेसडर बना के बाकी कॉलेजेस में ले जाइए, ये लोगों को पूरा वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन करने का बताया। अभी मेरे बहुत ही प्यारे साथी ने बहुत खूबसूरत शब्दों में, हिंदी में, उर्दू में, शेरो शायरी के साथ एक इमोशनल माहौल जो है, एक सेंटिमेंटल माहौल जो है, देश के प्रति प्यार का माहौल है, वतन परस्ती का माहौल है, वो बना दिया। तो मेरा भी मन किया कि मैं भी आपके साथ कुछ ऐसा शेयर करूं। मुझे याद आ रहा है कि किसी ने लिखा है, हजारों बरस रोती है अपनी बेनूरी पे नरगिस, बड़ी मुश्किल से होता है चमन में दिदावर पैदा। आपको अंदाजा हो गया होगा कि मैं किस दिदावर की बात कर रहा हूं। मैं देश के यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी की बात कर रहा हूं। बड़ी मुश्किल से देश को ऐसे नेता मिले हैं, एक बार जोरदार तालियां उनके नाम। नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने देश को बहुत कुछ दिया है, लेकिन पिछले 10 सालों में एक विकसित भारत का सपना देश को दिखाना और फिर वो सपना साकार करने का रोड मैप देना, मैं समझता हूँ कि ये सबसे बड़ी उनकी कंट्रीब्यूशन है हमारे देश को मजबूत बनाने की। और जब हम विकसित भारत की बात करते हैं, जब भारत हमारा पहली शताब्दी सेलिब्रेट करेगा, 100 साल का होगा, तो तब आपकी एज क्या होगी। जहाँ पे आज पुरी साहब बैठे हैं, चन्नी साहब बैठे हैं, तो आप भी ऐसे डिस्टिंग्विश गेस्ट बन के बैठे होंगे। आप ऐसे राष्ट्र को लीड कर रहे होंगे जो दुनिया का एक विकसित राष्ट्र होगा। और ये सपना प्रधानमंत्री जी ने हमें दिया, उस सपने को साकार करने के लिए सबसे ज़रूरी है कि जो हमारे देश में फंडामेंटल कमजोरियां हैं, जो हमारे बेसिक हमारे देश में फॉल्ट हैं, उनको ठीक किया जाए। मैं देश में हुए रिफॉर्म्स की बात कर रहा हूँ। पिछले 10 सालों में आपने देखा होगा, एक के बाद एक रिफॉर्म्स जो हैं, परफॉर्म रिफॉर्म्स की सरकार अगर मैं कह सकूं तो वो रही है पिछले 10 साल में। और उन रिफॉर्म्स में हर रिफॉर्म्स की अपनी अहमियत है, लेकिन मैं ऐसा समझता हूं कि सबसे बड़ी अहमियत वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन की होगी। और इस रिफॉर्म को एग्जीक्यूट करने से पहले जो मोडस ऑपरेंडी देश के प्रधानमंत्री जी ने अपनाई है, जो तरीकाकार अपनाया है, वो अपने आप में यूनिक है। पूरे देश को, पूरी नेशन को इसके साथ जोड़ने के लिए, कन्विंस कराने के लिए, उनकी राय लेने के लिए, मेरे ख्याल आज तक इंडियन डेमोक्रेसी में ऐसा मोबिलाइजेशन नहीं हुआ है। और मुझे खुशी है कि पंजाब उसमें लीड कर रहा है। अभी चन्नी जी बता रहे थे कि हमारी जो बड़ी स्टेट्स भी हैं, चाहे उत्तर प्रदेश है, चाहे बिहार है, चाहे बाकी स्टेट्स भी हैं, उनसे ज़्यादा कैंपेन जो है पंजाब में हुआ वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन का। चन्नी जी, मैं आपको भी इस बात के लिए बहुत बहुत आभार देता हूँ, धन्यवाद करता हूँ। आज हम पुरी साहब को सुनने के लिए इकट्ठे हुए हैं, तो मैं ज़्यादा समय नहीं लूँगा। दिल की गहराई से आपके प्रोफेसर्स को मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा, टीचर्स को धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा। हम हमेशा आपसे लड़ते हैं। अभी आते आते हिमानी मैम तो रास्ते में 3-4 लोगों से लड़ते आए हैं, ये नहीं हुआ, वो नहीं हुआ। लेकिन मैं आपको सल्यूट करता हूँ। जो आज मैंने देखा है, हमारी पूरी तसल्ली है, ये लॉ वाले खास करके बैठे हैं। अगर लॉ के स्टूडेंट्स ऐसे हैं तो आपका लॉ कॉलेज जो है पूरे देश में नंबर 1 मैं कह सकता हूँ। जो कैलिबर, जिस तरह का टैलेंट आप डेवलप कर रहे हैं, और ये तभी हो सकता है जब टीचर्स ऐसे हों। एक बार फिर आप सभी का धन्यवाद, और पुरी साहब का यहाँ पे आने के लिए एक बार फिर स्वागत। जय हिंद।
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your thoughts with us. Now, it is our privilege to welcome Shri Hardeep Singh Puri ji, the Honorable Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Government of India, as our esteemed chief guest. Sir has served as the Union Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs from 3rd September 2017 to 9th July 2024. Also, Sir held independent charge as the Union Minister of Civil Aviation and was Union Minister of State of Commerce and Industry from 30th May 2019 to 6th July 2021. Sir has had a distinguished 4-decade career in diplomacy, spanning in the bilateral and multilateral arena, having held ambassadorial posts in London and Brasilia, as well as being India's permanent representative to the United Nations in both Geneva and New York. He is one of the few Indians to have presided over the United Nations Security Council and chaired its Counter-Terrorism Committee. He has served as the chairman, RIS, as Vice President at the International Peace Institute, and as Secretary General of the Independent Commission on Multilateralism in New York. He is an author to 3 books, Separating Wheat from Chaff, Decoding Dominant Narratives, Delusional Politics, and Perilous Interventions, the Security Council and the Politics of Chaos. Sir has also edited the anthology Delhi University Celebrating 100 Glorious Years. Please join me in extending a heartfelt welcome to a statesman and a dynamic leader, Honorable Shri Hardeep Singh Puri ji.
My distinguished colleague in the Rajya Sabha, the Honorable Chancellor, Professor Satnam Sandhu ji, my colleague and friend, the former Home Secretary of Punjab, Sardar S.S. Channi ji, our collaborator and dynamic Pro-Chancellor Professor Himani Soodji, members of the faculty, and most of all, this very impressive student body. I'm delighted to be here today, not only to interact with you, but to have the privilege of interacting with you on a subject like one nation, one election. Let me tell you why I am so, I should use the word thrilled, but maybe that's not a term to be used, but why I'm so extremely happy and I feel privileged. I heard 4 speeches. I was told prior to coming here that 2 will be speaking for the proposition of one nation, one election, and 2 will be opposing it. But I heard 4 speeches, and all of them, each one of them was a stronger endorsement of one election, one nation, one election than anyone could have come up. So heartiest congratulations. It is customary on occasions like this for all of us to say nice things about each other, but I am not going to be in that mode. Let me tell you a few things straight from the heart. Why I feel so privileged and honored to be here? Because after I heard those 4 speeches, I heard Channi ji, Himani ji, and the Honorable Chancellor. I think each one of you has the potential to become not only an emissary to take this message of one nation, one election outside the campus and to the rest of society, but I think you make very good brand ambassadors for the Viksit Bharat journey. So I want to congratulate all of you. I've been around for a very long time. I have served 39 years in the Foreign Service, 6 years in international think tanking, and it's my 8th year as a minister. I've traveled to a lot of countries. I want to compliment and congratulate the Chancellor. This is a very impressive infrastructure in the university, but I don't get impressed by infrastructure alone. I've been around long enough to know that what makes the infrastructure more meaningful is the quality of the faculty and the students. So I think you're very fortunate that you have a combination of all 3. When I was called upon to edit a volume on 100 years of Delhi University, I was a little reticent. I felt a little uneasy because I asked myself, I will draw up a list of the very eminent people who have been students of the university, and I will not confine them to my age group. I will try to go to younger people and older if still some are left. What if they refuse? And I can tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. Not one person that we requested actually said no to writing a piece. We had the Chief Justice of India writing, we had Vice Chancellors of University writing. I wrote to Shri Amitabh Bachchan, and I wrote a personal letter to him. I've had the privilege of knowing him. And I said that, you're a very distinguished alumni of the university, please write. So he wrote me a very nice handwritten note which said, I was not a very serious student, and he told me all the interesting things he did as a student. And do you really think I should write? And I was so impressed with his piece that we converted it into the foreword of the book. So universities are very unique institutions. They bring together bright young minds, and if you have a committed faculty, which I see you have, those bright young minds are then further given an opportunity to refine their skills, grow, and ultimately what produces excellence is, of course, a good infrastructure is very important, but that interactive process amongst yourselves. I have a friend who I personally regard as the leading intellectual in the world today. He's written great books, many of them you may have read. He told me that more important than the university is the quality of interaction. And he teaches at New York University. He's written books like I'll come to the books in a minute. He teaches at New York University, but he's a foremost public intellectual. He said sometimes what is important is not what is just taught in the classroom. That curriculum, the quality of teaching is important. But the exchange of ideas amongst students and the faculty. And he said sometimes you can get great inventions, great ideas being thrown up on the sidewalks of cafeterias in places like Paris. But when I look at what the intellectual history of the world is, I think universities would have to occupy a pride of place. Because you can have great ideas produced outside also. But the ideas that you produce not in laboratory conditions for physical sciences, that's also important. Today I saw a very important space technology center here, the Kalpana Chawla Center. But what I find is that, you know, I was 7 years Housing and Urban Affairs Ministers, and I know a little bit about real estate as a result of that. So somebody says, if you want to buy a property, what do you look for? So somebody told me, you say location, location, location. But if you want to develop a country, and that's what we are talking about, then you should say education, education, and education. And that's where the university comes in. Let me digress from there to the subject I had, one nation, one election. I think the arguments on why we need one nation, one election, those arguments have been beautifully encapsulated in the report which has been produced by the committee which was set up by under the chairmanship of the former Rashtrapati ji. It has been referred to here. I think our four young friends also very logically talked about Parliament's power to enact this kind of legislation. And if I heard my friend mention it's beyond judicial review, I totally agree with that. But also the reasons why it should be done. And I think between Channi ji and my other colleagues on the dais, election expense is only one part of it. I would be not very impressed comparing an election expense, say, in the first election in 1951-52 to what now, because the context has changed. But it's absolutely true that expense is also important. And if you were to, or if you could devise a system which could conserve that money and say set up laboratories in an institution like this, or put it to other social upliftment causes. There was the example given of somebody who was chanting Ram on his lips and somebody chanting Roti. You know, these are all public policy issues which you have to grapple with. So I would say the expense part of it is one part, and you have to ask yourself a question, is it really necessary to go down that road? You know, one of you said very rightly that the first time when we held a general election, it was just around the time I was born, 1951-52, and then till 1967, you had one election for the entire country. And then some things went wrong with certain state assemblies, etc. You know, before I came here, I was hard put, and I want to share this with you, I actually tried to look for reasons why this thing should be opposed. Not because of anything else, just because if you're in a debating situation, then somebody supports the proposition, somebody opposes it, and out of that healthy discussion, you get some kind of a dialectical synthesis which you want to understand. And I couldn't come across any serious reason. Well, one reason, since now I'm more political than a civil servant, was that somebody will turn around and say कि अगर one nation, one election हुआ, तो जो राजनीतिक दल सत्ता में है, उनको इसका फायदा होगा. I don't buy that. Frankly, I don't buy that. It means that because you've got more resources. No. Today, this discussion is about democracy. And I think many of you, especially our young friends, referred to democracy. I mean, what makes India or Bharat tick? And I want to submit to you, we are not only the world's largest democracy, 1.4 billion people. That is an empirically verifiable fact, you know that. But we are something more than that. We are the oldest democracy. We are the mother of democracies, as the Honorable Prime Minister keeps saying. You know, we had democratic institutions functioning in India in the 6th century BC. You know how long back that was. When we talk about India as a nation, it's a misnomer. We are what? 1947 to now is not a very long time. We are also a civilizational country. And our period as an independent country is just 1% of our history as a civilizational power. 7,000 years old. You go to Varanasi. I don't know how old Varanasi is. 2,000 years old? Himani ji, or see the other city. So we are one of the ancient civilizations, and we have shown democracy as one of the great contributions that India has made to the world. There are many other contributions. I don't want to go into that. Now, what is the prime requirement today? The prime requirement today is that under the leadership of the Prime Minister, we've gone from being the 10th largest economy in the world, we're already the 5th largest economy, and if you believe the International Monetary Fund, we'll be the 4th largest economy in a very short period of a few months, and the 3rd largest economy in the world by 2027 or 2028. What does economic growth require? Economic growth requires an enabling environment. Why are some states, I'm talking about states and union territories as constituent elements of a larger country, why are some states more successful? Because the law and order situation is under control. They provide a good enabling environment for entrepreneurs, for industry to be established, etc. Now, democracy also means jealousy. I mean, in 1947, when we became an independent nation, these were two countries born from the womb of the same mother. Here we are the 5th largest economy in the world, and that other country which believes in using terror as an instrument of state policy and cross-border terrorism. And my colleague Satnamji referred to what happened in Pahalgam the other day. Let me in the strongest terms condemn this act of terrorism. And I can tell you, I've had the privilege, I'm perhaps the only Indian who has chaired the Counter-Terrorism Committee of the United Nations. Don't mix words, don't get confused. This was a despicable act of terrorism. And terrorism takes away the most fundamental human right of all, the right to life. And these are not people who have any cause or anything. This is one country is succeeding, the other country, born at the same time, is in terminal decline. They have been periodically utilizing terror as an instrument of policy. But so far, the response from the Indian government used to be, Acha, we condemn it, there was an attack on parliament, other things happen, and then we get back to business as usual. I think they've miscalculated this time. They've dialed the wrong number, because the leadership we have now, under the Honorable Prime Minister, and I should refer you to the statement he made, I think it was from Bihar. I think as categorical statement is enough, and now you will face the consequences. I think the Indus Valley, Indus Water Treaty, I think is a case in point. We've had terror attacks in the past, but previous governments have never sought it fit to take recourse to the water treaty in order to be able to inflict appropriate costs. And this is only one of the instruments. I don't think this is an occasion for me to speculate on the range of options that will be used, but I think a country in terminal decline, like our Western neighbor, will be brought to its knees so that they never think of resorting to such a despicable act again. As a student of democracy, I have always agonized. I've lived in the United States, I've lived in the United Kingdom, I've done 3 tenures in Geneva, I've lived in Brazil. Democracy is a very precious plant, but it needs to be nurtured. Don't take it for granted. You have to keep watering that plant. You have to keep nurturing that plant. Because what happens is that people take democracy for granted. And especially in urban areas, you sometimes come across a situation where urban apathy takes place. And you see, especially in urban areas, voter turnouts begins to slip. You know, in India, we are very fortunate that, I don't know whether politics is in our blood, but we take politics seriously. When somebody comes to talk to you, you take them seriously. And you say, it's very important that we interact with the person who's coming to talk to you, not only the candidate himself, but all the other people in the ecosystem, because you get a toehold. And after the election is over, you can go to those guys. Hey, you came during the election period, you made a set of promises to us, we want to hold you accountable. It's very important. But the problem is, and one of my young friends said, that if you have elections all the time, you come into something called voter fatigue, or what I call voter ennui, which means that if I get up in the morning and I conduct a vigorous campaign for 5 or 6 weeks after the code of conduct comes into being, then I keep worrying, and then the election result come, one election, suddenly 3 weeks later another election starts off. I think one of you was referring to what happened after the 2024 general election. We've had elections after that in Haryana, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Delhi. I mean, you know, by virtue of where I am just now, I'm not asked to go and campaign everywhere. But I can tell you, even, maybe I'm old and I feel the fatigue more, but you know, you finish one campaign, you go into another campaign, but more than the fatigue factor, which one of my young friends mentioned, there's something else. If the code of conduct is in place, and somebody mentioned what it's been in place about 800 days, that's a fantastic statistic. I want to compliment you for bringing it up. I think we should play it up also. आपने कहा 800 दिन अगर कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट हो, उसका मतलब है कि उन 800 दिन में आप कोई काम ही नहीं कर सकते. आप ना कोई कॉन्ट्रैक्ट का जो आपने टेंडर की बात की, वो that's one part of it. But your general governance comes to a standstill. So the purpose of democracy is to choose a government which represents the aspirations of the people, which is responsive to the aspirations of the people, so that they will represent the people. This is in marked contrast to what a bard sitting in the London Museum, Karl Marx, said. He was very cynical about this. He said, democracy kya hota hai, elections kya hoti hain? It gives the bourgeoisie an opportunity, it gives the proletariat an opportunity to choose members of the bourgeoisie who will misrepresent them in the legislature for 5 years. That's a cynical view. And I'm glad, I'm not surprised that that kind of political thinking, it sounds very good in textbooks. When you're young, you maybe think egalitarian society, etc. But when you come to real life, you discover what a load of so-and-so this is. I have to be careful about the language I use. So, BS, absolutely. But what is important about democracy is you have to nurture it. And one of the things I see is that this campaign on one nation, one election, for which I think the voice has to come from the people, so that the people who are in between, that is those who are currently the elected representatives, things are changing. We are getting what, 33% reservation for women. I'm married to a feminist, and I must say I support a lot of this thing. When 33% reservation comes for women, I hope a lot of you educated women will be available to run for office, because you need educated women in politics. But there's one more angle to this, which nobody seems to realize, which is that democracy is not there because I say I'm doing well. You are going to be judged by the quality of your work. If Modi ji won in 2014, do you know prior to that, no government in India, please correct me, Channi ji, no government elected in India for 37 years before that had got an absolute majority, that 272 mark. We did it after 37 years. Why? Because Modi ji came with a particular platform. This is what he wanted to do. And then when he got re-elected in 2019, from that whatever figure we had, we got 303. By the way, I've predicted most elections till now. Why? Because I think our people, the mass is wise, and our voter knows that if you go to them with hollow promises and you promise freebies, etc., they have an importance up to a point. In even the people of Punjab, Chandigarh, I think they will realize after a while कि वो लोग वो कहानियां दसिया सी ना एक किन्नी 40 महीने हो गए पंजाब के चुनाव 1000 रुपए महीना पहना नु मिलेगा ये तेला मिले नहीं मिले हाँ तो people then realize what is the credibility quotient in that. Whereas so people turn around and say, oh no, there is going to be anti-incumbency. There is also something that's going to be pro-incumbency. If you've done good work, you can go to the people and say, well, this is what has happened. I was Housing and Urban Affairs Minister for 7 years. And I can tell you, if you look at the statistics on what Modi ji's government has done in that period, a new parliament. I mean, the previous parliament was designed in 1922. It was never intended to be the parliament of an independent country. It was the legislature of a colonial power. A colonial power. You know, the GDP of India in 1700, I'm mentioning 1700 because the Battle of Plassey was 1757. We contributed 25% to the global GDP India. And if you take India and China together, the contribution to the global GDP was 50%. It's not without reason लोग कहते थे कि भारत सोने की चिड़िया थी. But that was the GDP. After 190 years of colonialism, what did happen? It came down, hurtling down, it became 2% from 25%. So today you are reclaiming your position in the world. You are reclaiming your civilizational path. You've got economic activity. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, affordable housing scheme. Modi ji in 10 years, Modi ji's government provided 4 crore people in the urban and rural segment for Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. When Modi ji got re-elected, he said 3 crore aur ko denge. If you look at our other schemes, look at urban transport. You know, we have 1,000 kilometers of transport, metro system functioning. We have another 1,000 kilometers under construction. And we've already overtaken Japan and Korea in terms of our metro system. We only have China, which is way ahead, and then the United States at 1560 kilometers. Within a few months or a year or two, we'll be more than even the United States. Look at our civil aviation. You had 74 airports in 2014. You have 150 airports. Let me come back to one nation, one election. Why is it important? You need to spend your time between elections on governance. Therefore, many of you talked about, you know, government and governance. You need less of one and more of governance. Now, if you're going to put 800 days under code of conduct, that is the time you're taking away from the work you should be doing on the governance front. You know, you can look at many reasons on why you need one nation, one election. And those reasons suggest themselves. Our young friends have come up with them. My colleagues on the dais have mentioned many of them. I'm sure with if you put on your thinking caps, you'll come up with more reasons. But what I'm really looking forward is that all of you, both faculty and the students, you will inject yourself into this discussion in your own mind, then amongst your people. And it's not an election campaign, but it's much bigger than that. I think it was Himani ji who suggested that countries like Sweden, South Africa, you mentioned, where they have one nation, one election and not periodic election, their GDP has gone up. The committee under the former president, they said GDP will go up 1.5%. That's a hell of a lot. At a time when global growth is at what, 2.5%, etc., we are growing at 6.5%. Just imagine if you could get another percentage point of GDP growth. It would be fantastic. But more than that, I also worry that if you keep having the current system, you will get a fatigue system. Every time somebody comes to me earlier, when oh, आपको election duty लगी, अब तो ये होता है election duty यहाँ पे भी लगती है, बाद में भी लगेगी, लगती रहेगी. People say, यार, you know, you still go as a disciplined कार्यकर्ता, you will go about it. But after a while, you say, yeah, is this the most productive work? You should do election duty. You should reach out to the people. You should make a connect. The most important thing is to govern, and this periodic, frequent election. Now, another argument which no one has brought up, which I think we should do justice to, भाई कुछ स्टेट असेंबलीज का जो समय है वो थोड़ा कम हो जाएगा, कुछ को बढ़ जाएगा. So what? So what? अगर मान लीजिए आपके 5 साल की स्टेट असेंबली है और किसी के 6 महीने कम हो जाते हैं या किसी के 4 महीने ज्यादा हो जाते हैं, because in order to rationalize how many states will be along with the general election, some will be later. But you will have a system which will become stable and predictable. It will give more time for governance. It will result in much less expenditure, and people, all sections of people involved. किसी ने मेरे को एक और आर्गुमेंट दिया, अरे साहब इसको मत करिए, वो जो झंडे वाले और पोस्टर वाले हैं उनका काम थ्रूआउट द ईयर होता है। मैं कहा यार उसका फिक्र मत करना, वो झंडे और पोस्टर वालों को और जगह काम पे लगा देंगे और किसी कैंपेन में लगा देंगे, उनकी आमदनी में कोई कमी नहीं आने वाली। So I think I am very clear in my mind, and I'm very happy that Satnam ji and Sunny ji have given me this opportunity to interact in this event. This is not a one-time event. This is what I'm saying. I think I request all of you to inject yourself, and you have an excellent environment here. Take this message to other people. Let them tell their representative, look, we want elections, but we want an election according to a predictable schedule, and we don't want कि आज general election खत्म हुआ, कल state assembly शुरू हुआ, वो खत्म हुआ, फिर दूसरा शुरू हो गया, and एक साल में 4, 5 election, और हर एक में code of conduct लग रहा है. The ridiculous situation. So let us all resolve to ensure that we will take this in a direction which is strengthening our democracy, and democracy is something that we can be really proud of. और बाकी जो countries जिनमें democracy नहीं है, अब देखो कि हालत क्या हो रही है उनकी. They are collapsing, and I think we should also change our mindset on those countries. पहले कहते यार collapse ना होने दो, हमारी सिरदर्दी बढ़ेगी. मुझे लगता है जो हरकतें कर रहे हैं इस बार उनको होने ही दो collapse. Let them jump in the. So thank you all very much, and God bless all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your inspiring words. Your insights today have not only enlightened us, but also reminded us the importance of visionary leadership and committed public service. Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this enlightening symposium to a close, I take this moment to express my sincere gratitude to Honorable Chief Guest, Shri Hardeep Singh Puri ji, for his gracious presence and thought-provoking address. We are equally thankful to our worthy guest of honor, Shri S.S. Channi ji, for his valuable contribution and distinguished presence.